A DNA match in 2026 has linked a serial killer to a 30-year-old cold case out of Hillsboro, Oregon, giving the victim's child, who's now in her 70s, a sense of closure. I'm Destiny Johnson with the Oregonian, and I've been covering crime for the past decade. And on September 23rd, 1992, a beloved neighborhood Avon lady, 82-year-old Elizabeth Wasson, was found dead in her bedroom by her own daughter and son-in-law. Wasson was a widow of a pastor and well known and loved in her neighborhood for still taking Avon orders, even well into her 80s. In the afternoon, on the day of her death, her daughter Tracy and son-in-law visited her. It was her granddaughter's second birthday. Wasson told her daughter she didn't have much to do for the day, that she might go grocery shopping later. At around 8:30 p.m., Tracy tries to call her mom, to no avail. And then again at 9. And they were concerned about her, so Tracy and her husband went over to Wasson's house to check on her. And that's when they found her dead. For years, authorities suspected that they knew who had murdered Wasson. A suspect they couldn't pin for the crime at the time, but by 1995 had already been convicted of murdering 4 women and had been sentenced to death for his heinous crimes. That man was Cesar Barone. Well, actually, he was born Adolph James Road in 1960, and by 26 he had changed his name to Cesar Barone because allegedly he was obsessed with Italian gangsters. He grew up in Florida, and perhaps not surprisingly, his criminal stunts began pretty early. In his youth, he raped his stepmother and assaulted his maternal grandmother, and he raped a 71-year-old neighbor, and that earned him a 7-year stint in prison. At some point, he moved to Oregon, where he escalated his crimes. He was no longer just sexually assaulting and hitting women, he was killing them. His known victims were Margaret Schmidt, 61, whom he'd strangled to death; Martha Bryant, 41, who he shot in her car as she was leaving her job as a midwife. She was injured in the initial shooting. Then he took her out of her car, sexually assaulted her, and killed her by shooting her once again at close range. Shanti Woodman was only 23. He sexually assaulted her, shot her, and then dumped her body along US 26. Betty Williams was 51. Barron attacked her in her apartment, and in the midst of the attack, she had a fatal heart attack. He sexually assaulted and strangled 3 other women who survived his attacks, and police had more than enough to suspect that he might have other victims. In fact, in 2009, detectives visited Barone in the Oregon State Penitentiary. They were trying to get him to confess to other crimes that he may have committed. Barone maintained his innocence. Despite having been convicted already of killing 4 women, a detective recalled him arrogantly saying, quote, "No, I didn't do any of those. I didn't even do the ones you guys convicted me of, and I'll be out of prison here in a couple of days." He died 3 days later in prison because of a tumor on his heart. In 2018, the bed dress that Wasson was found wearing the night she was murdered was sent off to be tested for DNA. It came back positive for male DNA, but not a specific suspect. The authorities did not elaborate on why at that point. The dressing gown was then retested in 2023 when Hillsboro Police Detective Megan Townsend reopened this case along with several old cold cases. This was able to happen due in part to federal funding that the Hillsboro Police was able to secure to be able to launch their cold case unit in partnership with the Washington County District Attorney's Office. Tracy, Elizabeth Wasson's youngest daughter, is now in her 70s. She said that she wasn't sure that the authorities would ever catch her mother's killer. And the announcement, despite both the victim and the perpetrator being long gone, brought her some measure of peace. For a more in-depth look, I want you to check out this amazing story that my coworker Noelle Crombie wrote. You can find it at OregonLive.com. I'm Destiny Johnson with the Oregonian. Thanks so much for stopping by. Hope you have a great day.